Susan Lindauer's story is an extraordinary one. Originally a peace activist, she was recruited into the US intelligence service, the notorious CIA, because she was trusted by Middle Eastern leaders. But she blew the whistle after 9/11, saying her own pursuit of potential hijackers before the attacks had been blocked at the highest level, and as a result she was locked up in a US military prison without a trial for 3 years. She's now written a book, Extreme Prejudice, about her story, and I spoke to her earlier this week about what she believes is the real reason for the collapse of the World Trade Center on 9/11, and more importantly, how it was done.
It was the CIA and Defense Intelligence asset covering Iraq and Libya at the United Nations in New York from 1995 until 2003. My specialty was anti-terrorism, and I was designated covertly by the United States government as a back channel to receive intelligence from Baghdad and Tripoli on terrorism issues. For example, my team started the talks for the Lockerbie trial with Libya, and Saddam Hussein was one of our best sources on terrorism intelligence throughout the 1990s. He was convinced that all jihadis would eventually become terrorists, and he was very worried that they would take advantage of the sanctions and the perceptions of weakened central authority over Iraq in order to set a base in his country. So he was constantly trying to get them out. So he was very cooperative with us.
Now tell us how you wound up in that sort of job.
I was a long-time anti-sanctions activist and an anti-war activist, and I also, uncanny as it sounds, I gave advance warning about the 1993 World Trade Center attack. And the CIA wanted to know if I would apply my activism to real-world politics and try to do something substantial that would help get the sanctions lifted. And I was motivated by a deep opposition to the suffering of the people of Iraq. In April of 2001, I was summoned to my CIA handler's office. He told me that he had a message to deliver to Baghdad and Tripoli, and he wanted me to take it right away to New York. When I got to his office, he told me specifically that he wanted to tell the Iraqi government that we were looking for any intelligence regarding airplane hijackings or airplane bombings. And if Iraq possessed that information and failed to give it to the United States, then the United States would declare war on Iraq and would bomb them harder than they'd ever been bombed before. First, I did not realize the seriousness of it, the gravity of the threat. So I gave him the message in New York, went back to Washington. Richard said, "What did they say to my threat?" I said, "Well, I didn't actually threaten them." And he said, "What do you mean you didn't threaten them? I told you to tell those blanketies that they better do what we say or we're going to bomb them back to the Stone Age. I want you to go back to New York and deliver the message exactly as I have communicated and tell them the threat originates above the director of the CIA and above the Secretary of State. That it only involves President Bush, Vice President Cheney, and Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. But I was taught always to communicate a message exactly as it was told to me, and that is exactly what I told the Iraqi people. So I'm not telling you something that somebody else did. I'm telling you what I did. In August of 2001, at the request of my CIA handler, I telephoned the office of Attorney General John Ashcroft. Because of the high-level work that we did, I had a phone number that went straight into his office. This is not a phone number that goes off in the ether. This goes straight to his private staff. And we requested an emergency broadcast alert through all federal agencies requesting any intelligence, actionable intelligence involving airplane hijackings and a strike on the World Trade Center identified precisely, okay? And I said the attack was imminent. We expected it any day, and this should be considered an emergency priority. We wanted any suspicious information. We wanted any fragment, anything that looked unusual, we wanted to hear about. In Minneapolis, the FBI responded to the emergency broadcast alert by sending information to the Federal Aviation Administration and, you see, the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the Secret Service, and the FBI headquarters, and the Attorney General's office, responding to the emergency broadcast alert that they had arrested Moussaoui in Minneapolis when he came into the country, and they had stopped him, and they were asking for an emergency warrant to open his computer. Attorney General John Ashcroft refused to give them that warrant to open his computer. It's an extraordinary thing, because we had initiated the emergency broadcast alert, and then Attorney General Ashcroft stumped us. Intelligence is a bunch of factions. It is not a monolithic organization where we're all lockstep. Every crime requires motive and opportunity, and I believe, even though I know the hijackings did occur, I believe the hijackings were a cover for the controlled demolition of the building. What people have been missing so far was the motive and opportunity. In fact, there was several months advance notice that the attack was going to occur. There was plenty of time to to identify the type of explosives that would be necessary, to figure out where they needed to go within the building, and to get the building rigged up. And at that point, it did not matter whether the airplanes were hijacked on September 8th or 9th or August or October. Once the building is wired, it's all ready to go. And this was like a magician's trick, where all eyes were on what the left hand was doing, the airplanes coming over the water, striking the building, and everyone could see that. But the real action that brought down the buildings was definitely the controlled demolition. There are two things that are important to know that have been suppressed. One, at the end of August, between August 23rd and September 3rd, there was strange nightly activity at the World Trade Center. At about 3 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock in the morning, parking garage cameras captured the arrival of 3 or 4 minivan trucks and vans. They only stayed for a couple of hours. The people who reviewed the tapes were able to determine these were not janitorial trucks. They had different colors and markings from the janitorial trucks, and they investigated them. This was an anomaly. They had never appeared at the World Trade Center before. They only came from August 23rd until September 3rd. They never appeared before or after. And we believe that they may have probably gotten other parts of the building wired up. But whatever they needed at the very end to complete the demolition was brought into the buildings in those 2-hour blocks on those 10 evenings. The trucks appeared after the janitorial trucks had left the building, and they left the building before AAA personalities on Wall Street arrived to start checking the Asian markets, which usually happens about 5:30 in the morning. So these people were definitely hiding their presence in the building. They did not want anybody to know they were there.
That was Susan Lindauer, their former intelligence agent for the US in the Middle East, in Libya and Iraq, particularly, and her book is called Extreme Prejudice, the terrifying story of the Patriot Act and the cover-ups of 9/11.